Hello everyone, welcome back to Just Another F1 podcast here on Apex Motorsport. My name is Richard Smyth and joining me for today's podcast is Ryan Caldwell. Ryan, thank you for joining me once again here on the podcast. We just had the Turkish Grand Prix, so I'm going to throw you on the spot and ask you to describe the race in 3 words.
Wet, tires, strategy.
Okay, interesting. That sort of sums up the race fairly well. There's been 2 Turkish Grand Prix in a row, which, I would say we haven't seen slick tyres at all in a race. We temporarily did see them during the weekend, but we will talk about that in a little bit. We're going to start off, Ryan, by discussing F1 fantasy. It's been a little while since you've been on a podcast properly to discuss the F1 fantasy, but as far as I can see, nothing has really changed.
No, sadly, which is disappointing to say the least.
Is I'm still top of the league. I'll say for anyone who hasn't been listening to the other podcasts, we each have 3 teams in the same league. It's just me v Ryan. I'm currently 1st, 5th and 6th, and Ryan is 3rd, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So it sort of balances out, but I am about just under 200 points ahead, but less. I've got a very annoying half point. Them points from Spa are really bugging me and everything. I do not like half points, but Ryan, just very briefly discuss the points you got at Turkey and if you're going to make any changes for the next race.
Well, realistically, I only have 2 teams. One of them, 2 of them was supposed to be sort of half joke teams, but one of them's actually performed far better than I would have expected compared to my, in quotes, good team, which is my 3rd team, which I created as like my try-hard, which I didn't realise was obviously what you're meant to do the first time you do it. But anyway, so I'll go with my main team, which is now one of my joke teams, Jap Scrap Engine, which has Verstappen, Perez, Gasly, Tsunoda, Ocon and Red Bull as a constructor, with Perez as my turbo driver. So basically it's everyone that has a Honda engine, apart from obviously Ocon. Ocon did really well for me in the Turkish Grand Prix there, so he managed to score me 11 points. Verstappen, obviously, 2nd, 35 points. Red Bull with Perez, Red Bull and Perez pretty much 59, 58 points, and then Gasly and Ocon picked up points. Tsunoda gave me a -5, which I don't like. And then my, in quotation marks, good team with Bottas, Perez, Ocon, Norris, Gasly and McLaren as a constructor had solid points throughout. Bottas 46, Perez 58, Ocon obviously 11 again, Norris 18 and Gasly 19, McLaren 25 points. So that gave me, which funny enough, both of my 2 teams scored the exact same amount of points this race weekend with 177 points. So I kind of feel bad for not using my turbo driver this weekend, because if I had that, not my turbo but my mega driver, if I had that on the likes of Bottas, I would have doubled some insane points. I probably would have got an extra, what is it, double, isn't it? It's double points.
Yes, for the mega driver. For the driver you have your mega driver on, his points is doubled.
What happens if you put a mega driver on a turbo driver? Do they even allow you to do that?
I don't think you can do that.
For if that was the case, I would have got an extra 58 points off Perez, but if I had stuck it on Bottas for that race, knowing that he would have stayed on pole and actually won the thing, I would have had an extra 46 points to my name, which would have looked really good with my, in quote marks, good team.
You have closed the gap to me at the top because I didn't have the best scoring weekends. My main team got 139 points, helped primarily by Hamilton and Norris both scoring 36 points. Then my second team, which is the drivers who changed teams going into the season alongside Lance Stroll, got 121. So I lost 5 points with Tsunoda, just like you did, Ryan. But I had Red Bull, which gave me 59 points, which I was quite happy with. And then my World Champions team, which contains Hamilton, Alonso, Raikkonen, Vettel, and of course Pierre Gasly, future World Champion. They scored 55 points, minus 14 points for Vettel as he was my turbo driver. Slightly disappointed with that. And I had Williams as a constructor, which meant I only scored 1 point with them. So I didn't have the best of weekends for this. But I'm just going to leave the team as it is now for the rest of the season. I'm happy enough with it, and hopefully I'll be able to. We'll keep the lead at the top. I think there's about 6 races left of the season, so you never know, Ryan. You still have time to catch up. Do you think you might be able to achieve that?
It depends how I play my Mega Driver strategy, correct?
Yeah.
I forgot completely to use my first Mega Driver at the first half of the season, so I missed out on a double points, possibility. Yeah, I really messed up with that. But aside from that, I have one more chance to try and catch up, so fingers crossed.
Well, one driver who was on form during the weekend was, of course, Valtteri Bottas, who he claimed pole position, but he finished second in qualifying because of Hamilton taking 10 place engine grid penalty. And Bottas obviously went on to win the Grand Prix itself on National Porridge Day. I think it's the most fitting day. We all know his obsession with porridge. Ryan, what do you make of Bottas's performance this weekend? Do you think it was the classic Bottas of when he really does show up for a race weekend, he's unstoppable?
I think what actually led down to it was he was the front man this weekend, so there was no need to obey to Lewis. There was no need to, stay with Lewis. Bottas normally does quite okay in the rain, minus that last race last year because what happened. He just spun. But let's not we'll forget about that. We'll forgive him for that. For he had an exceptional race this weekend. He just did what he needed the team to do. They backed him up and he backed them up. He scored the points. He took the car to the front, defended off Max. Not that he really had to try too much, but no, he did a solid job. I wouldn't say he's back on top, but he's definitely showing his potential now before he leaves the team at the end of the season.
It was great to see him also pick up what could be his last victory in Formula 1. Could be his last time on the podium for all we know, because he is obviously going to Alfa Romeo next season, who traditionally haven't been one of the better teams on the grid, don't really fight for podiums or race wins. That could all change next season, we don't know, but it reminds me a bit like Vettel in Singapore when he won in one of his final races for Ferrari. This didn't feel like it was the final race victory or final time on the podium for Bottas, but Ryan, how glad were you to see him sort of be rewarded, because he's been a fantastic team player for Mercedes since he joined, since they replaced Rosberg going into the 2017 season. Were you happy to see him on there as a sort of you've done all this work for us, we're going to give you the final few moments on the podium or final few races to enjoy it, and you've earned it with another race victory?
Yeah, I it's hard to figure this one out because of the points deficit between Max and Lewis. There's that tension going on, so he probably will just end up getting shoved straight back now that he can't, or he probably won't score the big main points for his own sake. He'll probably finish where he's going to finish in the championship lead. As for the team on his back, it's one of them awkward situations because they need Lewis to guarantee them this champion to constructors, and they just need Bottas to either sit there in second, third, fourth, wherever he can get the most points out of his awful weekends, which always happens. Never gets the best of luck. I would like to see him, get a wee bit more favourability just before he goes, but obviously there has to be something that, Lewis needs to win this 8th championship, Mercedes needs to win again, but the Bulls aren't just going to give it away that easy, so Bottas is really just going to have to step it up. I think he'll probably get a good chance coming into the new Saudi Arabian one, the very controversial track. I think he might get his head down, stuck in, and really take as much out of it as he can get to try and win another race.
That's 2 races in a row which Mercedes have won. Obviously Bottas won in Turkey and Hamilton in Russia. Obviously we all know what happened later on in Russia as well, but it wasn't a bad weekend for Red Bull given they finished second and third, so I think overall they still scored more points or roughly more, and we know Verstappen has regained the lead of the championship. Ryan, do you think these past few races have shown that Mercedes are really up for the fight and they may have been holding something back, or do you think Red Bull are just starting to struggle now that the pressure's really building on them, that they are in the title fight, and it's been a long time since they've really been in one? Probably 2013 was the last time they were in a proper title fight.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring in a little thing that I'm not sure if it was a part of a so-called rumor thing, but Helmut Marko has said that he's gonna investigate as to why the Mercedes all of a sudden had higher straight line speed, or more speed throughout certain points in that track where normally they wouldn't, especially in comparison to last year, and showing the difference in speeds throughout the tracks from last year and this year haven't really differed too much, but this year in Turkey has differed quite a bit. So he's wondering, is there something being done with the engine? Have they tuned it up? I don't know. Mercedes hasn't put full focus on next year. They have obviously been planning to upgrade this year's car to make sure they go out and win the Constructors' Championship as well as probably the Drivers' Championship for Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be interesting to see how Red Bull pull back on that. I think there's something they're looking into, either the chassis design, or they're going to try and see what Honda says with regards to the power unit. It's hard to tell what's going to happen throughout these last 6 races, but it's definitely going to go right down, I think, to Abu Dhabi, where it's going to be decided.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to go down to the final race of the season, and I think for that would be a nice way to end this current era of Formula 1. Ranking in its final race, it's the final time we'll see these sort of style of cars on track, and the last time we'll see Honda in Formula 1 for a while, although there's something to come out the last few days that they will be working closely with Red Bull next year to help them keep Red Bull Technologies are taking over the Honda engine department at Milton Keynes. So I think the plan is for Honda to work on next year and then Red Bull to go on their own for the following year. But Ryan, we've seen Red Bull use a special livery this weekend to sort of say thank you to Honda for their time in Formula 1. It divided a lot of opinions. I liked it. It wasn't my favourite livery ever. I think it did need the yellow, but I think it's one that it grew on me across the weekend. Ryan, do you think it's up there with one of Red Bull's better liveries or special liveries because they've had a lot, or do you think one of the ones they've used for testing is just far superior?
Oh, don't get me started on the blue and black testing livery they had one year. I was in pieces over that. I was like, I want that to be this year's livery, please, please, please. But obviously they stick true to their guns and what they like. They've stuck with the pretty much the same format, just slightly different colour, going from the purple to the I guess matte black. It is nice, and this weekend I'm not going to say it wasn't a surprise because we sort of seen it coming with a leak coming from Codemasters. Well, it wasn't Codemasters themselves, but the thing was leaked first through Codemasters game for the new 2022 Formula 1. I was like, okay, I like this, and then whenever they officially announced it and showed the proper photos, I was like, oh yeah, no, I actually do like this. Can this not stay? It's like AlphaTauri and Red Bull jammed into the one. I was like, this is actually a really nice livery. Why has no one ever thought about doing this? But obviously keeping the same Red Bull style, but just make it white. That car looks so much better in white than I think I've ever seen a car look in my life.
Yeah, it was one that grew on me across the weekend, and it's now the point where I did like it, and it will be weird to see them in the next race go back to their normal livery because we're that used to them this weekend driving around in a white race car. They did break the curse of special liveries because we've known in the past that they haven't always gone too well. Most notably Mercedes, was it 2019? Was it either 18 or 19 that
the German Grand Prix?
Yes. Which was a fantastic livery, but the race was an absolute disaster for them. Ryan, do you think there is this livery curse that any time they put a special livery, performances won't be good? Because we have to remember, McLaren ran the Gulf livery in Monaco. It was spectacular, and Norris got third.
Yeah, no, that was a real surprise. All I can remember is I watched a video on the times Red Bull has changed their liveries. It was one where David Coulthard, he took out basically a similar livery in white. I can't remember what it was for. It was like his last ever race, and he didn't even start the race. I think he got like halfway through the first lap, and the car just shut down on him. So there must be some sort of curse somewhere, either that the race goes wrong, but Red Bull seem to have magically made this curse disappear, which is confusing, but McLaren did it first, so they're only second to best.
To get back to the actual race now, and probably one of the most, I wouldn't say controversial moments, but one of the biggest moments was Hamilton deciding not to pit when the team asked him to. It's a little bit like what happened last time in Russia with Norris and Hamilton both deciding to stay out. Hamilton sort of he took the initiative. He stayed out. Ryan, do you think obviously he did go and pit eventually, but do you think he should have pitted earlier, or do you think his outcome was the best that he would have got in that race?
I do think that if he had have come in maybe 7-8 laps earlier, he would have had more of a fighting chance. But obviously he had severe graining on that inter tire because it wasn't completely wet and it wasn't completely dry. He probably had the most grip out of that tire because the track was starting to dry out a bit. And obviously, as we seen what happened last year with Lance Stroll, he pitted. It might have been a different. I think I'm on the right race here. I'm not entirely sure. But when Lance Stroll, he pitted on the inters and went for another set of inters, it was just insane graining. And that was because obviously they had created a smooth spot on the tyres with water still being able to be ejected from the outer edges of the wheel. So he had essentially a half slick, half wet tyre. Had he have went onto a slick, he wouldn't have had no grip at all. Had he have put on a new enter, he gets the insane graining where it's just grip, and it wears away the rubber, so he has no performance gain out of it at all. I think if they were going to do it, they should have done it a lot earlier when it was still wet, just to have that, even, as I said, 7-8 laps earlier, where it was still sort of quite damp on track with a wee bit of spray coming off. But towards the end of the race, there wasn't too much spray or anything at all coming off the wheels. So if he had to come on that wee bit earlier and done it, it would have been fine. I think when they brought him in was a bad decision. They should have just kept him out at that point because all he had to lose was against Perez, which if they had pitted anyway, which they did, he lost out anyway. I think they should have kept him out and fought for whatever he had at that time.
I'm just looking at the tyre sort of guide or the end of race tyre and pit stop analysis that Pirelli release, and it's just so funny to look at Vettel's because it's just green the entire screen and there's one single yellow dot where Vettel pitted to go on the medium tyres. It was at a point I remember saying that at that point I think they should have tried slicks, but then when I seen Vettel on track sliding about, I knew, yes, that's the wrong tyre, it needs to be intermediates. But as you were saying, they're creating a smooth patch around the tyre, and it was almost like a slick inter-hybrid tyre. And that's the second year in a row that the drivers have done this in Turkey. Do you think, Ryan, that from this race, given that there's certain drivers, well, one driver who didn't pit the whole race, that was Esteban Ocon, do you think there have been a lot of sort of lessons learned from this, that the intermediate tyres are actually very durable, and if you've got a drying track but it's still a little bit greasy, that a well-used intermediate tyre is the best tyre to use going forward?
Yeah, you would nearly think that if they know that it could dry up an hour into the race, you would nearly, while having still a wet weekend, you'd nearly think they would have a tyre maybe with 10 laps in it, that has starting to get a wee bit of a flat, not a flat spot, but a smooth spot on it. They would nearly keep that tyre safe and just be alright. If we're going to swap, we'll swap onto that. Make sure we get the heat into it as fast as possible and go from there. Because obviously the slicks weren't going to hold the heat, as we've seen with Vettel. Like, there was no heat to generate any grip against the water or the cool track. So he was sort of stuck and had to go for the inters again. I think Vettel actually would have had a wee bit more chance if he had stuck on the same set of inters as he did, just stuck them back on, because I'd say he would have had a wee bit more grip than what he had. It's obviously the risk that you run because you don't exactly want to run it right down to the wire, which as a phrase, a metaphor, is also very true. The wire across the tread of the tires. It's a difficult one because they know that it has happened before. They should just prepare a wee bit better for scenarios like this.
A general sort of theme and sort of quote that's been used across the internet the past few days is risk and reward, and that's really just summing up what this race was, because Hamilton and Verstappen are the only two drivers that are really battling for the title. I think everyone going into this race, everyone down to Gasly, which is in P9 before the race, was still in title contention. I'm not quite sure who still is now, but realistically, the only people who are going to be challenged for this title is Hamilton, Verstappen, with Bottas and Norris if things really go bad and Hamilton, Verstappen crash out every single race. But right, that battle between them two is going to be so intense for the rest of the season. Do you think that using them and the other drivers, that it's at the point of the season where you're going to have to risk certain decisions, pitting a couple laps earlier to go into slick tires on a wet track in order to go have your best shot at winning the championship? Or do you think it'll be very much Verstappen does what Hamilton does and Hamilton follows what Verstappen does?
I think it's going to come down to Mercedes getting scared. I think Mercedes is going to have the strategy all wired up in their head. They're like, right, we'll have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, the whole way down to Z. Where Red Bull will be like, we've got 1, 2, and 3. If 1 doesn't work, we try 2. And if 2 doesn't work, well, we're just going to go back to 1 and try harder. You know, they're not feared to really give this battle to Mercedes. Mercedes is probably going to look a wee bit more at their analytics, especially after last race. You know, well, I suppose this race, the Turkish Grand Prix, after the disaster masterclass, I guess you could call it, for Lewis Hamilton. You know, he wasn't happy about it when he came out behind, you know, in P5. He wasn't happy. He knew that the team had messed up in that call. That's why I guess he acted so much like a child, which everyone keeps saying. You know, the team has all the information. You know, the rain, where it's sitting on the track, when it'll come in, track temperatures. You know, they've seen other teams when they've swapped the tyres around, how bad they were grained. They should have taken all this into account and figured this out. So that's why I think coming into these last races, it's really going to be so much, how much can Christian Horner mess with Toto Wolff's head to put pressure on them to make the right decisions every single race. And when they do that, they're going to be under pressure. They're going to slip up, and that's when Red Bull's going to come in, hit them hard, and say, right, that's it. You've lost this race. Let's go.
I think one thing that really plays advantage to Red Bull is consistency going into next season, because they have the same driver pairing that they can continue on, where Mercedes are already starting to have the plan for Russell to move in Bottas. Bottas won't, because Bottas is moving the Alfa Romeo, as much as Alfa Romeo are not going to be fighting Mercedes in championship battles, they have links to Ferrari, who are one of the big 3-4 constructors that, you know, Ferrari should realistically be up there fighting, and they could next season. So Mercedes had to be careful in what they tell Bottas, and that means probably there's going to be more weight put onto Hamilton in order to develop the car and help the team. And for Hamilton, right, with the pressure of a championship battle, that might cause them to struggle. Whereas Red Bull have two drivers that, if Verstappen doesn't win the title, I don't think anyone's going to can complain, because he was never expected to win this season anyway. It was always Hamilton. Was going to have an easy ride to the title. Red Bull sort of come out of nowhere and brought a fantastic package, helped by Honda deciding that they're pulling out of the sport, so everything was brought forward a year, and there was a risk there for them to do that, but it has worked. So it's definitely going to be exciting last few races of the season. There is only 6. We've got the US Grand Prix, the Mexican Grand Prix, the Brazilian Grand Prix. Then we have races in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi. These next 3 races in the US, Mexico, and Brazil are 3 of my favourite races, because in the UK they're in the evening, and I just love that time to watch Formula 1. They're fantastic circuits. Brian, how excited are you to see, well, mainly US and Mexico, Brazil, because we don't really know too much about Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and then of course we've got the season finale in Abu Dhabi. What's your thoughts towards the end of the season?
USA, I think we're going to see some quite interesting racing going on there. You know, we've had a few wee instances there with, you know, Lando, and we've had instances with Max Verstappen that time where he was denied the podium because he just slightly overtook over the line before crossing the finish line. I think it was like 2 corners before. I remember that. That was funny. Mexico, I think Perez is going to do something really special, whether it's a podium or definitely, fighting a lot harder. He knows that track. It's his home crowd. He's going to be hyped up. He's probably not going to feel as pressured because he knows he can relax a wee bit in his home race. He knows the track. He's been there a lot. He loves that race. But he could also be cursed because we haven't seen many home drivers actually win their home Grand Prix, unless you're Lewis Hamilton, of course. But Charles still hasn't won the Monaco Grand Prix even after being set up perfectly. Brazil's a favourite. We've seen quite a few amazing races there. Definitely one to note was Per Albon getting conjunced by Lewis Hamilton again, or spun out, and then I think that was the one. No, I'm gonna be wrong there. I'm not gonna say it in case I'm wrong. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, both very controversial ones surrounding the whole human rights aspect of it and Formula One's standing in the world, how they're fighting for equality and how different social matters matter. And then they go to places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are pure money grabs. So I do find it quite controversial they're doing that. Abu Dhabi, once again, I think we're just having a Middle East finish at this point. They're just going to keep adding more places out in the Middle East until they give up. Come on, we need an African Grand Prix. We don't need any more rich people races. We need an African Grand Prix. Come on.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting. I think if we can have 3, I think the US, Mexico, and Brazil rounds, that's going to be, if Hamilton and Verstappen are neck and neck going into the final 3 rounds of the season with 2 tracks that they don't really know, that will set up a perfect finale in Abu Dhabi. But if we look towards next season just a little bit, Ryan, do you think Turkey deserves to have a place on the calendar for next season?
I would say so. It's not, obviously this year certain tracks have been shifted about, so we've actually seen quite a few more wet racing than we expected, and then one of them we didn't actually get to see at all. So yeah, Spa, you need to get moved because that's not happening. We need Spa in a bit of a sunshine, not in a bit of a wet season, please. Thank you. But apart from that, I think we do deserve to see Turkey, because Turkey, if it's a consistent wet race, they know that they're going for a wet race, which means we can see wet weather performance really take into place. So if they come to the likes of Silverstone, the following season, they know what to expect in a wet track. Especially for anyone that could have been coming up next season from Formula 2. Obviously, I don't think there's actually anyone, surprisingly. Not that I know of.
Well,
obviously, I haven't been kept in the loop yet.
Coming up from Formula 2 for next season?
Yeah.
Well, there's only one seat left, and that's with
Giovinazzi.
That's Giovinazzi's seat currently.
Yes.
It looks like it will be a Formula 2 driver taking the seat if Giovinazzi doesn't keep it. Oscar Piastri is sort of the fans' favourite for it. Guan Yu Zhou is expected to get the seat. The only problem is he wants a 3-year contract, and the team don't want to give him that because Theo Pourchaire is an alpha young driver who is pretty much been told you're in the seat the following season. So it's if Giovinazzi doesn't get the seat, it will be a young driver from Formula 2 making the move up.
I can definitely see that there will be a few spaces opening up next year as well. I think there'll be another 3 drivers possibly, taking the step down after next year. Lewis, Vettel, and Fernando Alonso. I think them 3 will probably be the end of an era next year after Kimi going this year. I can see it happening.
That's a bold call. That's one.
It's a bold call, but I can see it happening. Within the next 2 seasons, all of them 3 will have gone. Whether it's Lewis Hamilton after 2 years, Sebastian Vettel next year, or Fernando Alonso in 2 years' time, they will eventually go to make way for the younger drivers. So essentially, what I'm saying is Mercedes is going to be George's team within a year or 2.
Fair enough. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Ryan, should we move on to some predictions now?
Apart from my prediction I just made.
Yeah, some more current predictions for the US Grand Prix in Austin. If it goes ahead, these final 6 races. I don't know if they'll all go ahead. At the moment they are, but obviously with restrictions around the world, they could change. Just before we go into predictions, Ryan, I just want to get your thoughts on this. It's not to do with Formula 1, it's to do with motorbikes, and Valentino Rossi has said that it's a great shame for Johnny Ray not to get a proper shot in MotoGP.
Seriously?
Yep.
Was he denied any sort of,
Well, I think
entry?
It's an article I'm reading that Valentino Rossi has said that Jonathan Ray is good enough to be a very strong rider in MotoGP.
Well, of course he is. He's pretty much the Lewis Hamilton of World Superbike, which equates to at least podium places in MotoGP, I'd say. He's not fast around a track for no reason.
No, he is very, very quick. He is struggling a little bit this season.
I think it's more down to the bike than himself.
Yeah, he has had a few crashes. He's come off the bike a few times, but he's also picked up a few wins, so he's still in the title battle, and let's all hope it goes Johnny's way, because we do love supporting the Northern Irish athletes. And yes, anyone from Northern Ireland that has any connection to motorsport, we always want them to do the best. Ryan, the predictions for the last race, it was done by Craig, so you can take out any frustration you have with him.
No.
I scored a grand total of 0 points, so that's
we've only 0 to beat.
Yeah, and I just need to double check this, because up until the wildcard prediction, you got 0 as well.
Nice.
Craig's wildcard prediction was Mazepin to finish within 20 seconds of Schumacher,
which obviously did not happen.
Well, I'm just going to double check that. I have to scroll way back on Formula One's Twitter in order to find that. So far back, they put some amount of tweets out every single day.
I wonder if I can find it here. They just say one lap down.
Yeah. Oh, they do. Okay, that will be one that I'll put a star beside. That can that I will find out the correct answer for that. I'm sure if I watch the race again. But Ryan, we'll start off your prediction. Pole position for the US Grand Prix.
Pole position. I think this is actually gonna go to Max Verstappen.
Okay. Any particular reason for that?
I just feel that the last time we were, at the USA Grand Prix, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, it was 2019, because obviously we didn't have one last year due to COVID. Max finished third behind Valtteri and Lewis. Now we know that the Mercedes was really quick, but at the same time he was only 5 seconds off. So, I think Max is going to bring something special, and I think Red Bull is probably going to be more suited to this track this weekend. I don't know why, I just feel that they're going to have a wee bit more low down speed going around the long sweepy corners. Honestly, when the cameras go past it, that first turn 1, low speed corner, straight down into the S's, and then you take a long left-hander. I think the Red Bulls are going to be really mighty this weekend. I really do.
Okay, I'm going to go for Lewis Hamilton. I'm going to do the opposite of you for pole position.
I'm sorry, Craig.
Your top 3 in the race.
Top 3 in the race. Oh, right. So, actually, no, I'm going to stick with it. I think Max is going to win.
Okay.
Max is going to win. Depending on how his form is in qualifying, I think Valtteri Bottas will come second.
Okay, interesting.
And I'm going to go really bold here. This isn't for points, this is just being bold. I think... can I put 2 in the third place just in case?
No, 1.
Damn. I'm drawn between another Red Bull or a McLaren of Lando Norris.
Why not just go for Charles Leclerc?
Nah, I don't think he's the Ferrari power this year.
So choose one.
Or do I just play it plain boring and go Verbot Ham?
It's up to you. There's a title on the line. You have a little bit of a points gap. I'm not quite sure exactly. I think you've about 5 or 6 points in the lead, so you can.
Each one's worth a point, isn't it?
Yes, and it has to be the correct order.
Alright, screw it. I'll just stick in. Watch, I'll say Lando Norris, but watch it beat Daniel Ricciardo.
That's not helping me at all. Which one are you choosing?
Right, I'll just stick Lando then. Okay. Be happy.
I've gone for Hamilton to win, Norris second, Perez third.
Okay, so I'm not totally out of it.
No. Fastest lap?
Fastest lap, Valtteri Bottas.
Okay, I've gone for Norris. And your wildcard prediction?
My wild card prediction. Yikes. See, there isn't very much information to go off of, so I'm gonna say, how bold are you gonna make me go here?
Well, I'll tell you mine first then. I've went for Sonoda top 8.
Okay, that is quite bold. Okay. Nicholas Latifi.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to gamble too much.
You can take the risk.
Like, I want to say top 10, but I want to say top 12.
Okay.
I just think
we'll go top 11. We'll go top 11.
Meet me in the middle. Top 11. Wow.
Top 11. Yeah, and we can argue the toss at the end of the season, like many other of the predictions. There's about 8 points up for contention at the moment, so that'll be quite interesting.
Just based off of what?
Of a couple of like borderline, sort of, is that correct? Is it not correct? Especially the wild cards. So yeah, Ryan, any final thoughts about the Turkish Grand Prix before we end this podcast?
I definitely think Mercedes need to sort themselves out before they get destroyed.
Okay. So that is going to bring this podcast to a close. This podcast is, of course, available on all the usual platforms, hence the reason you're listening to this. But all future podcasts will be uploaded YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can just even ask your Amazon Alexa. Hopefully mine doesn't turn on. Doesn't. Good. Just ask it to play just another F1 podcast, and it should play. I think you can do that with all our smart devices as well. It's quite cool to hear that. This is, I think, episode 23 or 24, so we're almost at the quarter of a century mark, which is quite cool. But yeah, Ryan, thank you for joining me again for this one. And, well, your traditional final words before we end the podcast.
Mazepin is no spin.
Interesting. I think that's the first time you said he's not going to spin. He did have a few at the weekend. But yeah, like I said, Ryan, thank you for joining me, and thank you to everyone listening. You can check out all our links in the description below, and we hope you join us all next time for the American, or United States Grand Prix, I should say. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening, and we hope you join us all next time. Goodbye.